Good afternoon, students. This is the EGR 305 final project. My name's Anush Shetty.
My name's Jonathan McNellis.
And I'm Christopher Kirchhoff.
And we decided to do the vacuum assembly. So the Bissell Powerlifter PET 1793 is designed to make pet owners' lives easier, which is why it includes a long-reaching hose and cord.
It is an upright bagless vacuum that is compatible to many floor types.
There are additional tools included, such as the PET Turbo Brush tool, extension wand, and more.
So the first sub-assembly was the base assembly, which included one base cover air inlet, one base cover fascia, base inlet cover door, beater brush belt, beater brush cover, beater brush undercarriage, a flooring selector knob bezel, an undercarriage wheel housing, two undercarriage wheels, two main wheels, which include two wheel pins, a flooring selector knob, which goes inside the bezel, and two motor caps, which are distinctively different. So going into more detail with the first subassembly, the base cover is the fixed portion of that subassembly. To make it, I used a combination of generative shape design and projection elements. And this part connects to the beater brush belt as well as the beater brush in order for the vacuum to operate with the motor. And the base cover was made after other parts were housed inside to make sure they all fit together, which seemed to be the best order of making this.
The second subassembly was the motor assembly. This consisted of motor cover front, motor cover rear, motor, electrical shroud, air filter cover, and dust filter base. One of the more difficult parts in the motor assembly was the electrical shroud. That's because it mates with the motor cover rear, motor cover front, and motor. This piece provides airflow from the air intake to the motor, and it was made using part design and generative shape design for the conic section. During this part, I learned that the shell command has to be placed in the right place on the specification tree, or else certain pieces will get shelled that you don't want.
Moving on to subassembly number 3, which is the rear support assembly. This subassembly includes one rear support, one crevice tool, one hose extension tool, and one dust tank inlet. Going into more detail with subassembly number 3, looking at the rear support, it joins the base and the motor assemblies to the handle assembly. It also houses the hose extension and the crevice tools, and has a slot for the dust tank inlet. I used generative shape design for the main body curvature and incorporated 4 spline guide curves to get the shape exactly correct. The rear support mates with the dust tank assembly as well, so it was custom fit to allow clearance for the dust tank. The next subassembly is subassembly number 4, the dust tank assembly. This subassembly includes one dust tank centrifuge, and one dust tank cover. Going more in depth into subassembly number 4, looking at the dust tank centrifuge, it goes inside of the dust tank and mates with the dust tank cover. It works to create a vortex inside of the dust tank to help increase the suction of the vacuum. I used a shaft to create the main shape and utilized a circular pattern for the pockets on top. It is designed to mate with the riser inside of the dust tank above the holes in the bottom of the dust tank to allow for better airflow.
Moving on to subassembly 5, we have the handle assembly, which includes the back handle cover, the front handle cover, and the rubber hand guard that mates with the front handle cover. Going into more depth with subassembly 5, I focused on the front handle cover. It houses the turbo eraser PET assembly, which will be seen next, in the inside pocket of the front face. And The material that was chosen for this part was hardened plastic, which stayed consistent with all exterior parts that were shelled. And later, I used generative shape design to make multiple cross sections. And I learned this through a similar exercise with a vase that was done in class. And after that, the measurements of the bottom lip section was taken to create the top of the rear support assembly to make sure that they matched up later.
Subassembly number 6 was the turbo eraser PET assembly. This accessory assembly includes the bottom cover, top cover, turbine, turbine axle, 2 turbine spindles, turbine drive gear, turbine snap ring, the beater brush axle, beater brush right spindle and left spindle, and the beater brush belt. Looking at the Turbo Eraser PET lower cover, you can see that it mates with the top cover. It also houses the Turbo PET Eraser turbine and the beater brush assemblies. Used generative shape design to make the outside curvature and had to project 3D elements to ensure that the geometry of the subassemblies matched those of the lower cover.
Upon reaching the point of connecting subassemblies, the team found some difficulties with connecting the turbo PET assembly with the handle assembly. The turbo eraser PET assembly didn't really fit the front handle cover, as can be seen here. To fix this, we tried widening the front handle cover to provide proper clearance for the turbo PET eraser assembly.
Doing this would require changing multiple parts, including the front and aft motor covers, along with the rear support assembly.
Due to lack of time, we found best that submitting this as it is was the way to go.
In conclusion, the motor assembly pivots about mounts on the base cover assembly and is attached by motor caps. This allows for the vacuum to reach and clean difficult areas.
When the hose is not installed in the base assembly, the base inlet cover door utilizes a spring to close. This blocks any unwanted debris from entering the dust tank.
With more time, certain areas where subassemblies meet up would be improved upon. For example, the turbo PET eraser subassembly and the handle assembly could have been done a bit better to make sure everything fit.
Thank you for watching our presentation. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or feedback, questions, you may comment them down below and let us know. Once again, we thank you for watching. Goodbye.